We're millennials, this is how we do it. We make good money, but we're broken, we're going through it. We have many problems, we know how to hustle through it. Millennials run the world and we're here to prove it. We're millennials, this is how we do it.
Welcome back to Millennial Mindstate,
seeing the world through millennial eyes. I'm your host, Dr. Cher.
And I'm your host, LC. Now, welcome back to part 2 of our mental health segment. In part 1, we spoke with Brittany Hardy, and we talked to her about a lot of different issues concerning mental wellness, mental health, and how it's affecting our society. We have our special guest, Ms. Terry Nichols. She's a licensed associate professional counselor. We'll be asking her some questions regarding mental wellness and getting her feedback. Ms. Terry, welcome. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you coming and lending us your information and expertise about this subject matter.
Yes, awesome. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say just about different things and with mental health, and I know our listeners are excited as well to hear what you have to say, so thank you.
No problem. I'm excited to be here.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into the field.
Wow. So it's been a long journey. When I started for my undergrad, I was just set on helping people. I wanted to become a school teacher. And I picked up a Psych 101 class, and I fell in love with the content. It was one of the first textbooks that I had no trouble reading or studying, and I just really fell in love with just all the information. It helped me explain life. It helped me explain some things about myself. It helped me explain some things in my family, different family relationships that I had struggled with, and some of my own traumas from my own past. And I wanted to be able to learn more and share more and help people also have those realizations for their life.
Awesome. My minor is psychology, and I felt the same way too. You know, you're like, oh my gosh, look at this. Oh my gosh, what about this? And it's like the mind is so interesting, but it could be so scary. You know, because if you get in your own mind, it's like certain things kind of start to, manifest.
Yes.
So I guess, when do mental health disorders start to kind of manifest? Or kind of like, what are some of the signs with people? I guess if someone is normal, if you will, and then certain things start happening, then maybe they become isolated. Just what are some things to maybe look for?
So that's a really good question. I think some of the concepts about mental health is we consider people to be normal or broken. And that's actually, in my opinion, not true. I believe that everyone has tendencies in their brain, just like your brain is an organ, just like your body. And so if you are prone to have a heart disorder or to develop diabetes, you won't know that until you go to a doctor and they've diagnosed you with a physical ailment. But with the mind, you have tendencies to also develop certain mental health disorders. And it's not a disorder until it becomes a high frequency, a high intensity, and disruptive to your life.
Okay.
So you can live your life with just unhealthy habits for your brain, and until the point that your lifestyle and the different stressors affect your brain, you won't know that you have a tendency for anxiety or a tendency for depression. So most people that you encounter that you would consider normal have some tendencies for mental illness. They've just learned to cope with those through strategies through their lifestyle. And as a therapist, we can work with very extreme cases of mental disorders, or we can work with people who just need to find some better coping strategies to manage their stress levels, manage difficult relationships. And you can live your whole life being a very high functioning person, but also have a tendency to develop a disorder that, left unchecked, would end you up in a mental health institution, or to have very catastrophic consequences for your life. But if you manage it and you have the right supports and you monitor your wellness, you can, just be a very high functioning person. So,
Wow. Basically, what you were just saying is that a lot of situations, or disorders for that matter, happen from triggers. So does that tie into, I guess, the post-traumatic stress disorder? Is there a link, or does it have to be something traumatic that happened for you to go through a mental health episode?
So, again, another great question. Trauma is defined as negative pressures in life, bad experiences, but trauma can be really huge experiences like abuse or rape or a combat situation. Mental or physical illness can create trauma. But trauma can also be caused by what would be like a sandpaper effect, where just daily discriminations, daily racism, daily negative comments, emotional abuse, but on a smaller scale, and that can create over a long period of time the same effects in trauma. So it can also create that PTSD, those PTSD symptoms. And the more we learn about PTSD, what we're finding is that so many people have the post-traumatic stress symptoms, and that's called PTSS. And so they might not have it to the form of it being a true disorder, but they will still have the hypervigilance, they will still have the emotional distress, the anxiety facets, the restlessness, insomnia, waking up with night terrors, and that's just from an extensive amount of small trauma that's been, perpetuated in their life over a long period of time. And the other part of your question is, I think what you're asking is, are mental health disorders co-occurring? And that's a very huge part of mental health. Is usually someone will not have just one diagnosis. Usually the mental illness will have co-occurring diagnoses. So when a psychologist gives a diagnosis, it usually has other factors and figures that are contributing to that main diagnosis. So if you're diagnosed with bipolar disorder, bipolar is mania and depression, and usually, and there's different types of bipolar. There's bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, and then there's bipolar with schizoaffective disorder. So you can have, again, different gradients. I think we look at mental health as being kind of singular, or like a place of being, but the reality is it's more like a rainbow or a colored gradient. You can have the same bipolar tendencies, but be very mentally well and high functioning and manage your moods very well, and very few people would know. Your family members would feel balanced, and it would affect your life very minimally. But if you didn't manage your mental wellness, and you had a situation that was traumatic, and you didn't have social supports to carry you through that process, and maybe you lost your job, or you had a health crisis in the family, or something affected your homeostasis, your sense of normalcy, it could really bring out dysfunctional characteristics of your brain. And these would be natural characteristics your brain already had, tendencies you were already leaning towards. But when you balanced your life and your life was healthy, it was a lot easier. And if life is hard, life is difficult. I like to say life is trauma, because it is. It's full of very hurtful things, and we're not guaranteed safety. So I think sometimes our goal is to stay safe, and the reality is that that's a very hard place to obtain. A place of happiness and security is very difficult to arrive at or achieve. So we should almost reassess our goal to be well in the hardship.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you make a good point, kind of as we are going to kind of lead into mental health and mental wellness. Just talking about sometimes things can happen, small things, and you may not get over it. And then it just kind of sits and it festers, and you feel like you get over it, and then it's a couple months, you're like, you know what, I'm really not over this. It's still driving me crazy, and then it festers and festers and festers, and then now you may have to see someone to get help, or you may be trying to work it out yourself, and that may not be the best solution.
That's actually one of the best antidotes for trauma is what they call attunement. And attunement is when you have another human being or another creature that can reflect back to you your emotions and where you're at. So if you think about a young child, a parent will model faces and smiles and sing-song conversations, and they'll be attuned to the child's needs. If the child is sad, the mom will have a distressed look on her face that symbolizes, I see that you're sad, I want to help you, I want to make it better. And if you're happy, the mom or dad will also reflect that back to the child. I see that you're happy, I love that you're happy, it makes me happy. And that's that concept of attunement is the antidote to trauma and PTSD. And so if you have a small thing that occurs in your life and you have no one to reflect back to your emotions, to give you that sense of attunement, that the world hears you and sings back to you what's going on inside of you, that best friend, that close relationship. If you don't have that in your life, that small thing can become a major trauma in your life because of that lack of attunement. And so that's one of the therapist's greatest supports, is just having that therapeutic relationship to be able to reflect and model back what the client is feeling and what they're going through. And so I've worked with people who've had major abuse and rape and violence in their life, and people who've had very, very stable lives, but they still have this lack of attunement, and that's what they're looking for, is someone to hear and sing what's going on inside of them back to them and reflect it.
Oh wow, that's very powerful. So I guess my question would be this. So with what you just said, when it comes to a mental disorder, I guess the correlation in having a mental breakdown, would be because of all of those stressors that you just named, all of those situational occurrences that have happened, and finally they come to a head.
Yes.
And that's what causes a mental breakdown. It's a result of something that you've already gone through previously, but I guess you didn't suppress, what's the word? I guess you didn't have an outlet for it.
Yes.
So you suppressed it, and then a year later or two, something happens, or a trigger, and boom.
Right.
Yes. It can be from, repressed emotions. It can be, depending on your therapist's orientation, they can go back to early childhood memories or recollections, or the subconscious that's been unrevealed into your life and into your mind. And if it's a behavioral therapist, they'll look at what's going on, like what are your behaviors, what are your current behaviors that are supporting you getting better or hindering the process.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it's a culmination of life, which I think is one of the things that lends to the stigma of mental illness. We think that just, people experience this one thing and they become broken.
Right.
But the reality is it's a culmination of their entire life process.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point it becomes too much for that individual, because they don't have the human connection or the organic ability inside of themselves to see through the process.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a myriad of things.
I guess explain in your experience, how does mental health differ from men and women? Like, how do each of them maybe respond to it, their thoughts, about it? Times when you've been in sessions, do you see that maybe women are more prone to XYZ and men are more prone to XYZ?
It's a very good question. There are major differences in how the different genders can experience and portray their mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
There's also differences in ages. and there's also differences in cultures. So it really is based on the individual, and there's so many facets to an individual. You know, just where they are in their place in life, where they, you know, what they've done inside their family, their position in their family. So as a therapist, I would say that it's hard to pinpoint just in two categories. You really have to take the person as an individual. Some of the biggest, though, that I would see is that men tend to bully themselves through their trauma, bully themselves through their disorder. They tend not, I don't think, to get the help that they might need. They believe that men, I think there's some stereotypes that men, you know, should just be stronger than whatever is going on around them. And that can be dangerous. Because that can lead to a lot of aggression, a lot of substance abuse, alcoholism, or reckless living. You know, having risky sexual relationships or driving fast, road rage. Those all can be symptoms of latent mental illness or mental stressors that they've not dealt with. Whether that's, you know, they're very high functioning and have a very successful job, but they don't receive appreciation in their life, or, you know, maybe they have a situation with their child or their, you know, significant other, and they're unable to talk to anyone about it and receive that attunement. And because they don't believe that they should need help or that they should be stronger than this, then they don't get the help that they need and they don't have the supports. And so that's, you know, one of the biggest differences, where it's more acceptable for women to reach out and get help. And we have our sisters and our friends and our family members, and we're more likely to, you know, to reach out and to find that love and that connection that we need. So I think that's one of the biggest differences.
Attunement, I mean, this attunement thing, it's blowing my mind.
I'm sitting here listening to you, and what you're saying is so deep, and it almost sounds as if the entire population suffers from some type of, not necessarily a mental disorder, but has some type of mental wellness things that they may need to kind of address, because no one has gone through life without experiencing anything, whether it's been a job loss, whether it's been a death, whether it's been a traumatic situation or experience. It seems like the entire society,
and we all can have
you know,
for the triggers, like
and simple triggers, like you said, speeding, just aggression. Like for me, one thing that I know is a trigger for me that gives me anxiety is traffic. I didn't experience traffic like this until I moved up here, and I was applying for this job at this firm not too long ago, and it's for like some transportation and mobility stuff, and I did a traffic study, and the link between anxiety and depression and how traffic plays into that was very alarming. Like, oh wow, I thought I was just being funny, like, oh, traffic gives me stress and anxiety, but no, it really does. But anyway, we go on about traffic all day long, but
and if you think about the isolation, the lack of attunement while you're sitting in a car feeling distressed, and your mind is racing because, you know, though you have the radio and you might have an audio book or something that you can listen to, your mind begins to drift and begins to think about all the things you could be doing with your time that you're there. Another really wonderful saboteur to our attunement and our human connection is social media and the cell phone. I mean, if you are looking at your phone screen, you have what's called flat face. And so you can be modeling and engaged and have human connection, and you can go to this. And that's a very flat affect, and it does not reflect emotions. You're not giving attunement, which is critical for a human to be able to model the attunement to others, and also to receive attunement. So this is one of the greatest gifts I can give to someone, is to be engaged with them, to have eye contact, to have reflective facial features, to feel connected to whatever it is they're going through. That gives my life meaning and purpose. That gives me a sense of belonging. And then to receive that back gives me the love and the affection, the affirmation that I need. And so if you are distracted continually, and I'm just as guilty as the next person of being involved, you know, you're a high functioning person, you have a career that you're building, you have a family circle, you're involved with your church group or your school, your PTO, and you've got all these things that you feel like are very pressing to accomplish. You're showing flat affect to those around you, whether that's your children, your significant other, or even your friends.
Right.
I mean, we can be sitting in a room or at dinner and someone's phone will go off and all of a sudden the conversation gets cut short, and that reflection that I'm feeling and that human connection that we're feeling becomes immediately cut off and disrupted.
Ooh, that was deep, especially for millennials. And you know, we're not just guilty of it too. The social media and the attention to the phone has been, everyone's guilty of it. So it's not even just
ages.
based on age groups.
Yes.
But you know, millennials, we're more tech savvy when it comes to social media and all these different apps and gadgets and stuff.
Right.
So that was a very interesting point, and that was good. So what would you say is a link between mental illness, and I know you don't like to use the word illness, so we'll say wellness.
Right.
Mental wellness and violence. You know, you talked about that previously with the triggers, and especially how men kind of don't suppress them, and so as an outlet, it may be alcoholism or aggressive behavior.
Right.
So what would you see the link between that and violence?
Violence is a very broad term, and again, you can talk about violence as something like mass shootings or you know, homicide and violence to yourself. There's, you know, behaviors of cutting. A lot of our younger population are engaging in self-mutilation. There's violence in the form of verbal aggression and emotional abuse. There's domestic violence, which is a huge problem. Our number one health crisis in America is child abuse, and it's completely untalked about and it's unheard. And so, yes, the number one health crisis in America is child abuse. You know, 1 in 4 women are sexually assaulted before 18. 1 in 6 boys are sexually assaulted before 18. And so I deal a lot with people who have physical abuse and trauma in their life from not just having, you know, having experienced violence and not having that love and that support in their life. And it sets the human being up for just great struggle. You know, I'm sure that both of you have probably experienced violence in your own life, whether that was discrimination or racism or, you know, just hateful behaviors or physical abuse or violence that was perpetrated on you. Hurt people. And so it's just extremely big correlation with, you know, any form of violence and how you're managing your life and how you're supporting yourself as a individual that needs to give and receive attunement. And that's just so critical that you are gentle with yourself, because what you put into your mind and into your body and support yourself with is what you give out. And so then we think about the media and the things that we're watching and what we expose our children to. You know, from as small as just violent words, a lack of kindness, to as great as physical assault or stalking behavior. And that's such a huge question, and we could probably talk about that for days. So it's critical to manage your wellness. If you have a hurt, in therapy we like to call that unfinished business. If you have a hurt, be gentle with that hurt, because if you're not, you will end up hurting others. And we usually hurt the people closest to us. We usually hurt the ones we love the most.
Right.
And so, yeah.
I feel like I'm sitting here in a session right now. I feel like I'm really sitting in an actual session. A lot of stuff that you're saying is just it's so relevant and so true. People just don't understand, especially if you don't talk about it, what you've been through. Because, you know, people wouldn't believe some of the things that I've been through. And you know, maybe one day in the future I'll be able to talk about it, but not right now. But it's just society is just, it's crazy how you just have to really grow up and embrace yourself, because you just never know what a person has been through,
Right.
what they're going through, and like you said, hurt people. So all of the things that they've gone through, they'll put it on you, you know, and then it goes on to the next person. The cycle, it's a vicious cycle that continues on. And then to hear about this child epidemic of abuse is just, it's disheartening. And parents, you really need to take heed to your children when they're trying to tell you something.
Right.
You need to pay attention and watch for those signs, especially sexual abuse. You need to watch for those signs, and you need to talk openly with your children and let them know it's okay to talk about it. Like that's deep.
Yeah. I mean, it seems as though you have the words you were saying, be gentle with yourself, that's just kind of replaying in my head. Like, it just seems like you kind of have to protect yourself from certain things, people, situations. If you know a group or, you know, entity is a trigger or a stressor for you, you know, so you have to protect yourself in one way, and in the other way, you only know your hurt. She might not know my hurt, you know, you may not, but I know my hurt, and it's like I have to be gentle with my hurt. So it's weird, it's a weird place. You have to protect that way, and then you have to like protect this way. It's very difficult. So I can see how easy it could be for someone to feel very normal and then start the process of not feeling normal. And then, you know, and time passes so fast. My boyfriend last time was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's September. He was like, baby, you say that every month. Do you know that? Did you say that every month? I say that because I just can't believe how much time has passed so quickly. But when you're thinking about mental, you know, wellness or the lack thereof, this time is passing and you're still feeling the same way.
Yes.
You know, and you're trying to protect and be gentle, but things are just kind of falling apart.
So some of the things that I really challenge a lot of my clients to do just begins with self-work and self-awareness. Taking the time to sit with yourself, to be your own best friend, to talk to your own inner child. And we can do that through guided meditation, or there's also, you know, yoga and other healthy practices, spending time at the gym. But making sure that, I mean, we are our own worst critic. We are our own greatest abuser.
Yeah.
And so making sure that, you know, when you are focused on yourself and you are supporting yourself, that it's one of attunement and love that you're giving back to yourself. And so I think that's just a very critical and lifetime process of learning who you are and the gifts inside of you. And though it's important to protect them, it's also important to be able to share them. And so you have to have an internal strength and resiliency that allows you to tell yourself, you know, I realize and I recognize I've been through these experiences and I have this pain, but I'm not going to allow it to isolate me from the world that needs love and hope. And so I'm going to take care of myself in this designated time, and then I'm going to move myself out into the world and give the special gifts inside of me so that I can practice that attunement and I can give what my higher power has given to me to the world. But then I can set up time to go back and to practice that self-awareness and to meditate and to be kind and gentle to myself. So it's a very tricky balance, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
Self-awareness is it's important, and I'm glad that you touched on that, because as you stated earlier, a lot of people have triggers and they've gone through traumatic situations. And so being able to, and this is what a lot of society doesn't do, they don't talk about it. They suppress it and they assume that they figure, well, I'll just get through life. And then life starts beating you down, and then you start triggering these disorders. And so what I want to encourage the viewers is that it's very important that you talk about what you've been through. So that way, sometimes it's too embarrassing to talk about, but sometimes you just have to let it out so that way people that you are dealing with on a personal level, they understand. And you know, when you tell them this is what I've been through, I'm not saying this is how my future is going to be or how I'm going to be, but once you talk about what you've been through, people can kind of get an understanding of, okay, now it makes sense why she's so quickly agitated, or why she shuts down, or you know, why she may kind of be a recluse at times, she may be social at times. You just don't know where that person's headspace is at. So it's very important that you talk about what you've been through, be confident, and kind of, I don't want to even say get over it, but move forward, because a lot of these things happen because someone has done it to you.
Keep having those conversations. Be open to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind to your children in the process. Bring other people into that conversation. Practice it, model it. You know, get involved in things that help you, that serve you. If you find something, I do a lot of essential oils. I also have chickens, strangely enough. They make me happy. And I know that just sounds insane, but I embrace my crazy. That is my crazy. The oils, the chickens, the yoga. These are things that fill my life with contentment and peace. And so if I'm coming from a position of kindness and grace for myself, then it's so much easier for me to extend it to others. And when I fell short on that level, I just remind myself that that's a part of the journey. That's okay. And so have these conversations, build your life up to being the life that you choose, not the life that's just been thrust upon you. And you can do that in very small ways. And that's just, to me, that's the biggest part of mental wellness, is finding what speaks to your body, what heals your brain, and what gives you that sense of strength and grace.
Thank you so much. Like, this has been so wonderful, so life-changing. I learned so many new words today. I'm gonna start using them, and I think my takeaway from it is having that attunement, not for just for yourself, but for others. You know, being that for others as well. So that's definitely what I'm gonna take away from it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Kara, we thank you for coming on the show. Where can our viewers find you? And if they need a session, because I think I do that, you know, tell them about you and where they can locate you. If you have any pages, you know, let them know.
Awesome, thank you. So I have a website, TaraNichols.com. I'm also on YouTube. You just go to YouTube and search for me for Tara Nichols. I have other videos, small little mental health clip videos. I'm hoping that we'll be able to promote this clip also on our YouTube channel. My private practice is at the Psychology Center. It's in downtown Douglasville. It's across from the hospital. So you can just look up the Psychology Center, and you can call Irene is our front desk lady. She's wonderful, and you can just schedule an appointment if you'd like. And yes, we have a nonprofit. We're also very involved in the community. It's the Nichols Center, and so if you know anybody that just needs some resources and community connections, the Nichols Center, it's nicholscenter.com. And where you can find that. And I can give you guys all the links and everything for you to put out for your viewers.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was Millennial Mindstate. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Millennial Mindstate. We have a Twitter?
Yes, at Millennial Mindstate as well. And our website, millennialmindstate.net.
Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.